Welcome back, viewers. Welcome back, subscribers, and welcome, viewers, to this is going to be number 7 viewer request for Saturn in the first house or Aries in your natal wheel. And I want to thank Christy so very much for enabling me to be able to make this video for not just her, but each and every one of you viewers who have this same placement of Saturn. Okay, and all of you out there that would like a natal wheel interpretation from me, let me know. I would love to do that. Send me an email. Send me a comment. But I will need your email address because it is written. Okay. And any other, also, if you would like a copy, written copy of what I'm about to read, I need your email address. Just send me an email and let me know. All right. I hope everyone is doing great on this very Friday. Today I am taping on April 8th, 2022. And I want to thank each and every one of you who has subscribed, who likes and shares my videos, because that helps my whole channel to circulate out to more and more individuals just like you who are needing this information. So thank you all so very much. All right, Saturn in Aries and or the first house. The first house is usually considered to describe the physical body of the individual, the personality with which he relates to his external environment, and on perhaps a deeper level, the kinds of experiences which he is likely to attract during his life and which help him to shape and develop a certain set of conscious tools with which to govern his life. There is a two-way flow of energy through the first house of the chart because it is, as has often been suggested, a kind of lens through which the experiences of the environment pass to reach the individual and through which his own qualities must pass to reach the environment. Whatever factors are present within the individual birth chart, they must pass through the conditioning qualities of the first house, and in particular, the ascendant, before they can be recognized by others or expressed in a tangible fashion. All 4 angles of the chart are related to this inward and outward flow of the reality of the inner person into the outside world. But the most personal and most obvious of these 4 points of release is the ascendant. The entire first house relates to the physical presentation of the individual in a conscious and deliberate manner. Whatever a man innately is, he must express it through a body and according to a body type, which gives the term, quote, body, a larger framework. The ascendant and the first house are often equated with the Jungian idea of the persona, which, if it is to be a positive and effective medium through which a man may present himself to the world, must be in reasonable accord with the more hidden, unconscious aspects of his psyche. The idea of the persona offers a considerable amount of insight into the function of the ascendant, which is often maligned by being considered merely a superficial mask, which has little relation to the inner reality of the person. Like the masks of the ancient Greek tragedy, the persona is the person's statement of himself to the world. Through this cultivated component of the psyche, he declares his role according to the manner in which he has developed over the years. The persona, like the ascendant, does not come into full conscious flowering until a certain level of maturity has been reached. Ideally, this role should be a synthesis of what is best in him and most useful, and should be worn lightly so that the man does not make the mistake of identifying with his presentation. It is very much what he would ideally like to be, or what he is developing into, rather than what he automatically is at any given time. The first house is the most unformed part of the birth chart, for it, even more than the rest of the chart, is in a process of becoming. According to the strength or weakness of this presentation, and according to whether or not it is crystallized and rigid or flexible and lightly worn, the man is able to stand at a precarious balance point between his outer environment and the world of his unconscious motivations. If he pulls too much toward one, the other reacts. He is required by the tension of the pull to stand at the center if he begins to identify with the role which he has chosen. He crystallizes into it and is then at the mercy of the hidden and more treacherous aspects of his own psyche. If he ignores the outer world and attempts to withdraw into his own darkness, he is at the mercy of the environment and is dominated by it. From this viewpoint, the importance of the ascendant, may be inferred, for it would appear that its development needs always to be in delicate balance with the direction of the chart internally in order for the man to be in balance within himself. Some idea of the effects of Saturn in the first house of the natal chart may be seen if this psychological adjunct to the traditional astrological interpretation is considered. Saturn's traditional associations with crystallization and the identification with mundane values suggests that one of the most frequent psychic effects of this position, if left unconscious, is a crystallization of and identification with one's mask, with a consequent inner vulnerability to moods and effects, and a great difficulty in expressing the inner person to the outer world. The mask becomes a prison and cannot be torn away, and behind it, the man slowly suffocates. One of the main qualities which appears to accompany Saturn in Aries or in the first house is a lack of self-assertion of a positive kind. There is often a need to enforce one's will and to control the immediate environment. But rather than being the spontaneous and self-confident assertion of the individual, this is more of a defensive maneuver, which sometimes attempts to attack first because it is fearful of attack, Sometimes the need for control is expressed in a subtle and indirect way, so that situations are manipulated without any real evidence of aggressiveness. This is the characteristic coupling of need and fear, which is so often found with Saturn. The natural shyness and stiff awkwardness of Saturn is expressed more obviously with this placement than with any other, although the individual often learns during life to cultivate a smooth, cool, and polished surface. Saturn conjuncting the ascendant is frequently concurrent with a difficult birth, usually physically, but sometimes psychologically as well. And this curious coincidence occurs too often to be a real coincidence. It is, moreover, reasonable to assume that the natural reluctance of the person with Saturn in the first house to expose himself to the outside world might even extend to birth. It is common with a first house Saturn for the individual to learn from childhood that it is costly to get too involved with life. And there is a basic weakness in the persona which causes him to identify both too much and too little with the outward shell of his personality. He is therefore vulnerable to attack and control from the outside, and generally knows it. And much of his life may be spent in devising ways of protecting himself so that the extent of his vulnerability is not discovered. The person with Saturn in the first house is often high in suspicion and low in self-confidence. And he looks out at others from behind an intangible but often very powerful barrier that effectively isolates him from the real impact of life. And I just want to interject very briefly and quickly right here. I'm feeling called to say that don't feel bad. Don't feel guilty. Don't feel bad in any way if any of you are at what is just being said, because again, this was what the energies were of Saturn specifically at the exact time of your birth. So this is what was given to you. And it's no need to blame yourself or anyone else either. Okay. He may sometimes be burdened with chronic ill health, particularly as a child when he has not yet learned other means of successful withdrawal from the arena. He often has little faith in himself, but the self with which he identifies is the mask rather than the total psyche. From the deliberate withdrawal from the roots of his own psychic life stems the curious lifelessness and dryness which is too often observable in the person with this placement of Saturn. One moment, I will be right back. I apologize. Okay, sorry about that, viewers. All right, let's continue. Saturn is considered to be in his fall when it's in Aries. And from this, one might deduce that this is a difficult position for him, and one which is not easily carried. Possibly the most difficult side of it is the tendency to be cut off from both the flow of outer life and the flow of inner life, so that the individual is stranded in a very small and very arid area of his psyche, difficult to reach, and unable to touch the main spring of purpose and meaning, which would enable him to face the outer world with courage. But I am inclined to believe that planets in their fall, and Saturn in particular, can offer to the persistent and perceptive person a much greater key to the meaning of the planet, and therefore to the development in life of the function which it symbolizes. So what that's saying to me is that's a blessing in disguise. There's something really deep and big for you to find out with this Saturn placement. And it will be a great, huge, huge benefit, not just for you, but you will then be a key player for others in assisting them to uncover the same thing. Wow. This is because a planet in its fall must generally struggle, and it is this struggle which, if carefully tended, yields insight and eventual expansion of the field of consciousness. This is particularly true of Saturn, who, when placed in the sign of his fall, is often stripped of the courage and confidence, the natural gift of the Aryan, which is required to tackle the problems of living head on. Yet the thing he wants the most is the joy of being free, of being first, of exploring unknown regions and meeting unknown challenges, and reveling in the innate realization that his existence is guarantee enough of his purpose. It is the person with Saturn in Aries or in the first house who, with effort, has the greatest possibility of achieving this kind of freedom. And I must say, each and every one of you who have your South Node conjunct Saturn, what I just read, is exponentially more, even more for you, emphasized for you. That's beautiful. Saturn may overcompensate with this placement as much as with any other. Consequently, there are usually two distinct kinds of reaction to this struggle between the desire to challenge and experience life to the fullest and the fear of being hurt, dominated, and crushed by the forces of a hostile environment. The man who perpetually effaces himself to avoid a struggle and who backs away from those situations which might call for his strength, aggressiveness, or direct confrontation expresses one kind of unconscious Saturnian reaction. He often has no quote-unquote temper and rarely displays anger. But this can be very hard on the physical body because the natural tendency toward irritability is turned inward against oneself. This position is often connected with symptoms of a psychosomatic kind, such as migraine headaches, which are often linked with unexpressed anger and frustration. The self-effacement of this expression of Saturn is not truly humility, but it is rather a fear of entering the fight because of the inner certainty of losing it. There is often great emphasis on being, quote unquote, unselfish. A favorite keynote of Saturn in Aries or in the first house. But to be unselfish, one must first have a self to give away. And the difficulty with this placement is that in the beginning, until the individual comes to terms with his fear, there is no real acceptance or expression of the self in the first place. Saturn in the first house often feels that he is never able to have what he wants, that life is forever thwarting his desires. This is largely because he does not ask for what he wants. Or if he does ask, then it is with the concurrent feeling that he does not actually deserve a reply. The will and the use of the will are often frightening to this kind of individual because he is afraid of his own will and consequently projects what he terms willfulness or selfishness onto others. As he comes to terms with this shadowy and powerful aspect of his own personality, for the person with Saturn placed here has a powerful and controlled will if he chooses to recognize and utilize it. He generally finds that along with his frustration, he has also learned control over his desire nature and has shaped his personality into a disciplined tool. Although Saturn is in his fall in Aries, Mars is exalted in Capricorn. And the energy is similar with both these positions. And the author is talking about Mars concurrent with Saturn because Mars is the natural planet of the first house and Aries. Okay, so let me read that sentence one more time here. Although Saturn is in his fall in Aries, Mars is exalted in Capricorn. Just one moment, I'm just trying to see why the author's saying Capricorn. Mars is exalted in Capricorn. And the energy is similar with both these positions. Oh, okay. He's just, he or she. It's probably a she. No, it's a she, Liz. Okay, the author. All right. She's just saying that it's the energy of Mars in the first house and or Aries is also exalted. It's a similar energy in Capricorn. Okay. As this Saturn placement. Because, again, Mars is the natural planet for the first house and Aries. So there's both of those energies when you have Saturn in the first house and or Aries. Okay. So, although Saturn is in his fall in Aries, Mars is exalted in Capricorn, and the energy is similar with both of these positions. The controlled and directed will, coupled with a sense of purpose, is one of the more positive qualities offered by Saturn in the first house. At the opposite end of the spectrum, the more aggressive manifestation of Saturn in the first house often appears, and this individual may be at first glance rarely distinguishable from the truly fiery type of temperament. No one is more outgoing than he is. No one more prepared to take charge or seize control of a situation, either through sheer force or more subtle calculation. His philosophy is that the best defense is offense, because it has not yet occurred to him that it is possible to control oneself without the necessity of controlling everybody else as well. That's what you're learning. For those of you that this sounds correct for. One closer expression, on closer expression, this kind of individual is often found to be as shy and awkward as his more self-effacing brother. So you could flip. He may find it as difficult to participate fully in life and to experience the sense of richness and fullness which is so characteristic of the fiery personality. The use of the will is something available to every human being, but it grows in proportion to one's self-knowledge and self-mastery. The natural fear that the majority of people feel about the unpredictability of life is connected largely with the unconscious of the majority of people about the resources and richness of the human psyche. Most men feel inadequate when confronted with their own powerlessness. The man who has achieved a degree of psychic integration is far better equipped to cope with this life because he is generally aware of the purpose of his own life in a broad sense, and also more aware of the energies which he can utilize from within himself to carve out a piece of life for himself. Saturn in Aries, or in the first house, tends first to emphasize the fear of powerlessness because it suggests a clinging to the more superficial features of the personality and a consequent loss of contact with the richer inner person. Eventually, this fear can prod the individual into a deeper exploration of what he considers to be his identity. Saturn in the house of the identity is closely connected with this search, which can help to yield greater knowledge, greater integration, and the greater and more productive use of the will. Okay, that is all I have for right now. And again, if any of you would like a written copy of this, or you would like me to do a general interpretation of your natal wheel, send me an email, leave me a comment. And if you have any questions, send me an email, leave me a comment. All of my information is always in the description box, drop-down box below this video and each and every one of my videos. Until next time.